Hi there, welcome to Poetics Gaming. Today we're going to be taking a look at Super Fantasy Brawl, an upcoming board game by Mythic Games for 2 to 4 players. In Super Fantasy Brawl, you play a wizard, assembling a team of mighty champions from the history of Fabulosa. Your goal is to win by defeating your opponent's champions, or by controlling certain areas of the board, as shown here on the left. This is the first in a series of videos that will be taking an in-depth look at the terms that appear on ability cards, as well as each champion in detail, including their ability cards, and a statistical breakdown of each champion. Once you've selected your 3 champions, you're going to take their ability cards. Each champion has 6 ability cards associated with them. You're going to create a single deck that you're going to play with for the entire game. On your turn, you will draw 5 cards from this deck. However, to play a card, you must expend the core of magic that the card is associated with. There are 3 cores of magic, including blue for manipulation cards, yellow for creation cards, and red for destruction cards. Your goal is to achieve 5 victory points, either by defeating enemy champions using these ability cards, or by completing challenges that are randomly drawn from the challenge deck. Let's take a closer look at the different types of cards you'll find in Super Fantasy Brawl. As you can see, there are 3 different types of cards, and we're going to go through it bit by bit, as there's quite a bit going on. First, next to the number 1, we have the champion icon. This icon indicates which champion this ability belongs to. Second, you have the action type. There are 3 different types of actions in Super Fantasy Brawl. You have attack cards, skill cards, and reaction cards. 3, we have the card name or the ability name. 4, we have the core of magic that is associated with that ability. 5, that is the green boot. You have the amount of movement that the ability gives that champion. 6, the range, starting with the min and then the max. 7, the strength of the attack, if there is one. 8, the effect. 9 is a defensive modifier that you'll find on reaction cards. 10 is a bit of flavored text. 11 is the card number, and 12 is the illustrator. Now, some important things to note are the following. Attack cards can only be responded to by reaction cards. Skill cards are not able to be reacted to by reaction cards. This makes skill cards particularly valuable when playing Super Fantasy Brawl. Now that we have an understanding of what an ability card looks like, we need to also understand what can appear on those ability cards. There are roughly 21 terms that appear on the champion ability cards, and they can be broken up into 5 categories. The first is violence. These are terms that increase the amount of damage that is done to other champions. These include terms like bloodied, add damage, deal damage, double, and poison. The next category is maneuverability. These are terms that allow your champions to move about the arena. These include dash, jump, and swoop. The next category of terms is sustain. Sustain terms allow your champions to stay on the board longer and to mitigate damage that may come to them. These include terms like heal, lifesteal, and armor, specifically from reactions. The next category of terms is control. Control terms allow you to move other champions around the board, or even your own. These include terms like fear, force, place, pull, push, root, and swap. And finally, we have deck terms. These are terms that allow you to manipulate your hand or your deck, or to manipulate the hand or deck of your opponent. And these include terms like draw, plan, and stun. I'll be going over each of these terms as they appear on the champion ability cards. The champion overview is going to be broken up into 3 different sections. The first is an overview of the character card, including their upgraded side. The second is a look at their ability cards, looking at their manipulation core cards, their destruction core cards, and then their creation core cards. And then finally, a statistical discussion in which we'll take a look at how the champions compare to the rest of the champions that have been released thus far. This first video is just going to go over 3 champions, Dugrun, Goldar, and Gwen. The next video will go over Kilgore, Suzhou, Darren, Wrath, Mariusz, and Corvage. And the last video will go over Lorelei, Nevermore, Taze, Colel, Solka, and Arquette. The first champion we're going to take a look at is Dugrun, the Warden of the North. Dugrun has 2 armor and 6 health. His health is below average, but his armor is the best in the game, tied only with Lorelei, making him quite difficult to attack. If Dugrun secures a kill, he is upgraded. His health goes up by 1, and he gains the ability that if enemies are attacking and they are adjacent to Dugrun, they must target him, making him even more of that sort of tanky control type character. Let's take a look at Dugrun's manipulation core ability cards. The first one is an attack card called Mighty Blow. You move 1 and then make a melee attack with the strength of 1. After the attack, you will push your target 2 back. If the target is damaged by the push, they suffer stun. Now the way you do that is if the champion is pushed back, but they cannot go the full distance because there's something in the way, say a champion, a pillar, the edge of the arena, they instead suffer damage equal to the distance remaining in the push. If this occurs with this card, that champion also suffers stun. Now what stun means is that your opponent has to discard an ability card that is associated with the champion who is suffering stun. If they can't do that, then they must show you their hand, making this card quite useful for the cleverly positioned Dugrun. The next manipulation core card is a skill card called Shield Slam. You'll move 1 and then dash 2. Dash 2 means you have to move in a straight line along a row of hexes. After that, each adjacent enemy you are next to will suffer push 1, so they'll move back 1 space, or take damage if they are unable to move back that 1 space. Dugrun's destruction core cards look like this. The first one is his reaction. Each champion has 1 reaction. For Dugrun, it's called Hold Ground, and it says, negate any displacement effects caused by the attack. What this means is that if the attack has a push, pull, fear, force effect, it means that Dugrun or whoever is being attacked will not move. An important note about that, reaction cards, even though they're specific to champions, can be played by any champion targeted by an attack, as long as you have the core available and the card in your hand. Meaning, if Dugrun was on a team with Kilgore and Suzhou, Kilgore could play this card and not be moved by the attack. His second destruction core card is called Blizzard, and it is an attack. You move 2, make a melee attack for 2, and there's an after the attack effect that if damage was dealt, you will deal 1 damage to each other enemy. This card is particularly powerful for getting damage across the board to other champions, and could be sequenced properly to eliminate 1 or maybe even 2 champions for the clever player. Dugrun's creation core cards start with an attack card called Knockdown. You move 2, make a melee attack with the strength of 2, and after the attack, Dugrun's allies gain +2 attack damage against the target until the end of turn. This is a fantastic card to combine with other high damaging cards from other champions. His next creation card is a skill card called Onwards. You move 1, draw a card, and put it into your hand, and then your allies may dash 1, that is move 1 hex. This is an excellent card for positioning around the map or for just getting some movement to get closer to your enemies. Now that we've taken a look at Dugrun's ability cards, let's see how he stacks up statistically to the rest of the champions. As you can see on the left, there are several categories we're going to use to make this comparison. The first is health. This is the total amount of health they have in their unupgraded side. Armor is the total amount of armor they have on their unupgraded side. Movement is the total number of movement statistics across their 6 cards. Average damage per card is the total number of damage statistics across the 6 cards divided by those 6 cards. Highest single damage is the highest amount of damage that could be played on a turn using only this champion's cards, excluding traps, but including terms like push, which can be translated into damage. Violence is the total number of values associated with the terms in the violence category, the same for maneuverability, sustain, control, and deck. And finally, the number of above average refers to the number of above average statistics categories. So as we can see here, Dugrun has 4 categories in which he is above average. As we can see here, Dugrun has below average health with 6, compared to 7.1. His armor, however, is well above the average of 0.53 with a 2. Dugrun is exceptionally good at staying on the board and mitigating those attacks. He has an above average, but only barely so, movement. However, this is quite surprising because you look at him, his art, and some of his ability cards, and you might think he's a very tanky character, which he is. But actually, he's quite mobile with regards to getting around the board and securing those challenges. His average damage per card at 0.83 is below average, but that's kind of what we would expect out of a tanky character. His highest single damage is also below average with a 7, but still it's important to keep in mind that with a 7, you could potentially knock out one of the weaker characters like Wrath or Gwen. His violence statistic is above average, meaning that in general, as we've seen, he can buff his allies to do more damage. Maneuverability, not surprisingly, is below average with a 2. Sustain, he has one of the lowest sustain statistics in the game with a 0. Control is a 3, meaning that Dugrun is a character that is excellent at controlling areas and manipulating the board space. And finally, with a deck score of 2, it's slightly below average, but just barely in terms of manipulating your hand or your opponent's hand. Overall, Dugrun is slightly below average in terms of his above average abilities. However, he is a character that plays very much to his strengths. He's difficult to move around. He can move around much more quickly than you would expect, and he is capable of controlling areas of the board by pushing. Overall, I would say Dugrun is an excellent champion, and he's someone I typically choose when I'm playing the game myself, if he is available. The next champion we're going to take a look at is Goldar, the Scourge of Several Seas. Now, Goldar starts with 1 armor and 8 health, meaning that his health is above average, and his armor is also above average. So he's already, as we can see, a bit of a tanky character. If he secures a kill and is upgraded, he gains the ability Immune to Push, which may or may not be advantageous depending on what other champions there are on the board. Let's take a look at his manipulation core cards then. The first one is an attack card called Anchors Away. You can move 2, and then you make an attack directly in front of you in sort of a sweep. So you have 3 hexes that you can target with a 1 damage attack. After the attack, push 1. So for every successful attack you make, you will be pushing them 1. This card could be really, really good at moving people sort of away from particular areas on the board that you may want to control yourself. His second manipulation core card is a skill called Set Sail. You move 1 and then dash 5, ignoring champions and traps. Now, what makes this a particularly great card is that you can ignore enemy champions and traps. You can sort of move quite a long distance. 5 is very far. And for each enemy champion you move through, you deal 1 damage, and that can't be mitigated by armor or reactions or anything like that. So it's a good way to secure damage in that way. This is an excellent card that provides Goldar with quite a bit of mobility. And it's one that I'm always excited to see when it comes up for me. Goldar's Destruction Core cards start with an attack called Harpoon Strike. With Harpoon Strike, you move 2, then you make a direct line attack, minimum range 2, maximum range 3, for 1 damage. And after the attack, you pull the character 2. So this is great for, once again, manipulating that space, controlling space, getting characters out of key areas so that you can score challenges. His next Destruction Core card is his reaction. It is Intimidation. It gives the champion who's being attacked +1 armor, and after the attack, the attacker suffers Fear 2, meaning that they have to move 2 spaces away from their target. And with the Fear term here, what that means is that they have to be farther away from that target than when they started. Goldar's Creation Core cards start with a skill card called Me Hearties. You get 2 movement, and then you draw 1, meaning you'll draw 1 from your single deck of ability cards and add it to your hand. Then the following status effect goes into play till the end of your turn. Goldar's allies gain +1 strength to their attacks, and they get +1 movement until the end of the turn. Now what's important to note is that this only applies to ability cards that have movement attached to them. You do not get to add additional movement to cards that do not have already the movement statistic on them. His next Creation Core card is an attack card called Plunder. You move 2, make a melee attack with a strength of 2, and after the attack, you draw 1 card for each damage that was dealt. This is an excellent card for adding cards to your hand and giving yourself more options. So let's take a look at Goldar and see how he stacks up compared to the rest of the champions. He has above average health, armor, and movement, but below average damage per card and highest single damage. It is worth pointing out that his highest single damage makes it so that if he were to go and attack another champion who is at full health, he would be unable to take them down using only his cards. His violence is below average. His maneuverability, however, is above average. His sustain is below average with a 1 compared to 1.7. And his control is actually the best in the game with a statistic of 5, meaning that there are 5 values associated with control terms on his cards. He is extremely good at controlling the board. He has just about the average of deck cards, and overall he has 5 categories in which he is above average. Overall, Goldar is an excellent champion. He is quite tanky, he is more quick than you might imagine, and he's able to control areas of the board very, very well, using both push, pull, and fear. Goldar is an excellent option for anyone looking for a tanky character. The next champion is Gwen, the Gathering Storm. Gwen has an armor of 0 and a health of 6, making her quite weak in terms of her health. If she secures a kill, which is highly likely given her ability cards that we'll see very shortly, she gets the following benefit. When you activate Gwen, decrease the minimum range by 1 and increase the maximum range by 1. And we'll see how this applies to her ability cards, but it should be of surprise to no one that she is a ranged damage dealer, a glass cannon, if you will. Her Manipulation Core cards start with an attack called Ignite. You move 2, and then you make an indirect range attack with a strength of 2. That indirect range of 2 means that you don't need to have line of sight, meaning that the attack is not blocked by champions or statues or anything like that. As long as they're within 2 hexes of Gwen, she can make the attack. And after the attack, her allies gain +2 attack strength against that target until the end of the turn. Her next Manipulation Core card is a skill core card called Teleport. It says simply jump 4. What this means is that she can move 4 hexes, ignoring champions and statues, as long as she ends up in a space that is not occupied by a champion or a statue. This is an excellent card for making sure that you have the right angle or position to deal that damage or to secure that challenge. Gwen's destruction core cards are her bread and butter. This is really where you can see her as a glass cannon, starting with the attack Fireball. You move 1 and then make an indirect attack, minimum range of 2, maximum range of 3, for a strength of 3 damage. And after the attack, you deal 2 damage to each champion adjacent to the target. Now, if Gwen is upgraded, that minimum range goes down to 1, and the maximum range goes up to 4, which is pretty far away, making her very, very dangerous. Additionally, the post-attack effect of deal 2 damage to each champion adjacent to the target, that damage cannot be mitigated by reactions or anything else, making her extremely dangerous to multiple targets if your opponent has placed their champions poorly. Her next destruction core card is an attack called Flame Spear. You move 1 and then make a direct ranged attack, minimum range 3, maximum range 5, for 3 strength. And after the attack, you push 1. Now the direct line attack means that you have to be in the same hex row to make this attack, and there can't be anything in the way, a champion or a pillar or anything like that. However, the maximum damage that can be done with this card is 4 if you manage to pin that target against a wall or an edge or another champion so that the push effect is translated into damage. Gwen's creation core cards start with an attack called Chain Lightning. She moves 2, makes a direct range attack, minimum range 2, maximum range 3, for a strength of 3. And after the attack, if damage was dealt, deal 2 damage to another champion within 2 hexes of the target. This is an incredibly useful card that can deal damage to multiple targets. We see that Gwen really lives up to her reputation as a glass cannon in that she can do a lot of damage with most of her cards. Her last creation core card is her reaction. It's called Arcane Shield, and it gives the champion who's being attacked +1 armor. But if the attacker is not adjacent to the target, this card gains +2 armor for a total of +3 armor against the attack. Now that can be extremely helpful against certain attacks and makes her sustainability a little bit higher than you might expect. Statistically, Gwen sits exactly where you would expect a glass cannon to be. She has below average health, she has one of the worst armor statistics in the game, and she isn't particularly quick with regards to her movement statistics. However, she has the highest average damage per card in the game with 1.83. She is capable of above average single damage using only her cards with 9, meaning that she can kill or defeat most other champions as long as no reactions are played. She has the highest violence statistic in the game with 6. She is not terribly maneuverable, but she is just below average, so it isn't terrible either. Her sustain when she is standing next to someone else and she plays her reaction is below average. However, if there is at least 1 hex in between her and the target, that goes up to 3, which is well above average. She's not great at controlling the board. She is good at removing enemy champions from the board, but not in terms of controlling it with a push or a pull or anything like that. And she doesn't do much for manipulating your deck. Overall, she is slightly below average in terms of the number of above average categories, but she is very, very good at what she does, that is being a glass cannon. If you're looking for damage to add to your team, there are worse champions to choose from. Gwen is very good at making sure that other champions are eliminated from the board. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Join me next time as I take a look at the next 6 champions in the game and a look at their ability cards and a statistical discussion of how they compare to all of the released champions thus far. If you're interested in learning how to play or you just want a game, you can send me an email at poeticsgaming@gmail.com. Or if you want to give it a go yourself, you can try it on tabletopia.com for free. I'll put a link in the description. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you next time.